There is nothing that you interact with as much when driving your Miata as the steering wheel. Okay, maybe the shifter, but the steering wheel is the main thing that you're looking at and touching all the time. It's a big part of the driving experience. So why not make it really nice? Well, exciting news is that Mazda Miata now carries MOMO steering wheels, one of the most iconic steering wheel brands out there. And today, I'm going to install one in my very own 91 Miata. Exciting times. The original factory wheel isn't in too bad of shape, but it's over 30 years old. The leather is getting pretty worn, and it's not the coolest looking steering wheel in the world, so I'm excited for a replacement. The one I'm going to be going with is the Monte Carlo. Very classic black wheel that should suit my standard black interior really well. It's got these nice little swells right where you hold it at 10 and 2, black stitching with kind of a nice brushed effect on the black metal. Looks fantastic, feels really good, and it's a hair smaller than the stock wheel. At 350 millimeters, the stock wheel is 365, so it should give my knees a little bit more space in the car. The other cool thing is some of the original Japanese market and European market early NAs came with a MOMO steering wheel that looked almost just like this, except they had an extra pad in the middle. So it's actually a pretty appropriate steering wheel to use in this car. Of course, anytime you fit an aftermarket steering wheel, you also need a hub adapter. So I'm going to be using this Sparco unit that we sell. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. It'll take a little bit of modification, but we'll walk through it together. Just like any good project starts out, the first thing I'm going to do is disconnect the battery. Okay, so as I begin to remove the airbag with the battery disconnected, which is held on from the back with 4 10mm nuts, we should probably have a little chat about safety. If your car is a daily driver that you take every day to work and to get groceries and commute, probably shouldn't do this. The airbag is here for a reason. It is a life-saving safety device, and that's pretty important. And we even say on our website that all of our aftermarket steering wheels and hubs are for off-road use only. So that means your track day type cars, autocross, especially if you have a roll bar and an actual racing harness to keep you firmly in the seat, then aftermarket steering wheel is okay. For me, I'm in a bit of a gray area because this is a sort of a fun weekend car. I don't drive it every day, but I do drive it on the street. The way I think of it is it's sort of like driving a classic vintage car because, of course, they don't have any airbags or safety equipment. It's just a determination that you have to make as an individual that you are okay with taking the risk. So we leave that up to you, but disclaimer, would not recommend removing your airbag on a daily driven street car. Also, you need to look up the laws in your area. Obviously, if you need to pass any kind of safety inspections, you probably can't do this. There are other aftermarket steering wheels out there that actually allow you to keep the airbag. We make one at Mazda that's like a wood grain version of the stock wheel. There's also Cypher steering wheels, so check those out if you're considering a way to keep your airbag but have a nice aftermarket wheel. One other thing to mention, if you're removing your airbag but you're still keeping your stock standard seat belts, you should consider taking out the tearaway loop that's in here. So there's actually a sewn-in loop of extra material that's designed to tear away in the event of an accident. So it gives you a little more space and time to fly forward and meet the airbag. Well, the problem is, once you take out the airbag, you don't want to fly forward more because your face will probably bash into the steering wheel or maybe the windshield. So people suggest cutting the stitching on that sewn-in section so it's just a straight belt that's not going to rip. So you'll be held back more in the event of an accident. I'm not going to actually show how to do that on camera, but it's probably something that I will do if I decide to keep the non-airbag steering wheel long term. Okay, with the 4 nuts out, I should be able to pull this out. And we can see our wiring. There's a blue plug for the airbag and an orange plug for the horn. There's also a little string that attaches to this tab back here on the steering wheel. Looks like this has already been cut previously, so this has been out before. unclip this. We have to take this horn wire off first, which is the orange one. Press down on that tab, it slides off. Then we have space to move that tab and slide that off. Okay, airbag's out. I'm gonna go store this somewhere safe. So before I remove the steering wheel, I wanna make sure it's straight and make a mark on the shaft up and down, which it looks like has been done previously. Maybe that was me and I didn't remember. You see that black Sharpie line? Just to give an idea for where the steering wheel is straight. So when we put the new one on, we can get it as close as possible. The 21mm lock nut, let's break it loose. But as you can see, it's not very tight. The torque spec, I think, is only like 35 foot-pounds. So we should be able to persuade this off with a few wiggles, maybe some bops. It's on there pretty good. There we go. And the wiring slips through. And there's our original steering wheel. Okay, now here's where we must begin to talk about wiring modifications. In our case, using the Sparco hub, we're gonna have to remove the clock spring and modify some of this wiring a little bit. There are some hub adapters out there that don't require removing the clock spring. There's the Works Bell and there's the Daikai Boss hub kit, which are more of a plug and play. They're a bit bigger. They come with various wiring adapters, so you can plug right into this and they fit over the clock spring. So that's pretty nice. They're a bit more expensive, and one possible safety disadvantage is that they're just solid metal. One nice thing about the Sparco hub is it actually is designed to deform. It has these little arms that if you hit it really hard, it will actually give. Obviously not a huge safety benefit. You still wouldn't want your head to hit the steering wheel, but at least it has some give to it. So with that in mind, I'm going to show you how to remove the clock spring and modify the wiring to make a hub like this work. So while I take these plastic covers off, which are just held on with 3 screws through the bottom, what is a clock spring? Well, it's this thing right here, and it allows the wiring for the steering wheel to rotate with the steering wheel without binding anything. So it has some connections inside that can rotate. So our new hub adapter does have a way to do that, but we're going to have to make our own little connector that can ride on the back of it, and we'll see that when we get to it. There we go. And there's our beautiful clock spring. It's held on with 3 screws, and this plastic piece in here will stay behind. That's actually the turn signal cancel cam, and the new hub actually does have 2 little holes that will slot into that, so your turn signals will still work like they're supposed to. There's a little zip tie down here that's holding the wire to the clock spring. I'm going to go ahead and snip that. There we go. Does that give us enough room? Barely. Here's where we have a little bit of a decision to make. Some people like to save time by simply cutting the wires here, especially if you know you're never going to reuse the clock spring. You can cut these, and the green wire, you can barely see in there, green with the red stripe, that's your horn wire. So you can splice into that and use that to connect to the MOMO horn. For me, I'm afraid of commitment and I don't like hacking factory wiring. There could be a scenario where either myself or a future owner wants to put the stock steering wheel back in. So I want to keep this wiring intact. So that's going to take some further disassembly, starting with this whole kind of turn signal assembly here. There's 3 Phillips screws in here, and one of them has a ground wire attached to it. Now if you can see, that ground wire has a little tab on the other end of it, so we'll have to squeeze those together in order to pull that ground wire out after the screw's out. Actually, before I pull this whole thing off, I think I'm going to remove this bottom cover just to give more access to all the wiring. There we go. So as you can see, down here we have the same type of blue and orange plug that we had up top for the horn and airbag. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug those, as well as this little ground wire with the white connector. That's all that's stopping us from pulling that clock spring wiring out. Like most wiring connectors, there's some sort of push tab you have to push down on to release it. There we go. Now these work the same way as they did up top. I have to take the orange horn one off first. There we go. That was a tough one. Orange wire out, blue wire out. See the zip tie up here? I'm gonna give that a little snip. There we go. Okay. There we go. I'm gonna try to keep all this stuff in the same orientation. So go ahead, snip this zip tie. There's that pesky ground wire. There we go. Just had to squeeze it together. Out it comes. Just gonna carefully slice that. Unwrap it. There we go. Clock spring wiring separated. And that's how to remove the clock spring without having to hack any of the wiring. Yes, it was a bit of extra work, and yes, it probably would be easier to use a plug-and-play hub, but overall, I feel really good about doing it this way. Now it's fully reversible. Okay, before I re-wrap up all this wiring and put it all back in place, I'm going to make one cut to the factory wiring, but it's on the steering wheel. I'm going to salvage this connector for the horn, because this I can actually plug in down below to this original connector. And this will be really easy to splice back together if I ever decide to go back to the factory wheel. So I'm going to cut this, extend the wire, and bring it up to the new steering wheel. It should just clip right in. There's a little tab in there I'm going to have to push aside to get it past the blue tab. There we go. And it clips right in. That's a nice way of doing it. Now there's one more thing to do with this plug, and that has to do with eliminating the airbag warning light that's going to come on, because the car's going to know this is unplugged now. So basically, if we just short out the two little pins that are in here, that should make that light go away. So the word on the street is if you take a spade connector, it's about the right size to slip over the two pins in the airbag connector back there, thus shorting it out and eliminating the airbag light. Let's see if it actually works. It is the perfect size. Slips right on. That's pretty convenient. I might slap a piece of electrical tape over it just to keep it safe, but job done. Let's tape this all back up. All right, now we can put this back together. Just want to make sure to get the wire routing correct. It kind of goes up and over this module, and then it'll come down and it'll zip tie up to the bottom of the steering column along with those other wires. There we go. Clean. Okay, now I can officially reattach this turn signal assembly. And after this, we'll be able to move on to the hub adapter. We're getting close. By the way, this lower steering column cover is a little bit of a tricky unit to get back on. It's got two tabs at the top that hook underneath the dash, and it's got these two bendy clips on either side that hook into some slots in the side of the dash. So it's going to take a bit of finagling to get back on, but we'll fast forward to when this is back on. Okay, now it's finally time to start mounting our hub adapter. It's got a little marking up here that says top, so we'll orient it this way. And if you notice, there's two different sets of 6 holes. That's so it's compatible with the 70mm spacing of the MOMO and Sparco steering wheels, And the slightly wider hole spacing is for Nardi and Personal and some others that I can't remember. Now, we may not be able to get the steering wheel perfectly straight just because of where the holes are, but we'll get as close as possible, and then final adjustments can be made at the tie rods. Probably best to leave that to an alignment shop. Anyway, this wire that's built in is your positive wire for the horn, and that's connected to this contact strip that goes all the way around the backside. So what we need to do is make a little arm that's going to ride on this strip and connect to the positive horn wire that we connected earlier. The MOMO steering wheel comes with a nice horn button that suits the wheel. It's got a ground connection and a power connection. And it also comes with this ring that sandwiches in between the steering wheel and the hub, and this is where we're going to ground it. They also provide this nice little wire that's going to go between here and here. So this is the horn wire that I created earlier. And conveniently, there's a now unused hole that was used for the clock spring that we can use to run a metal strip that's going to rub the back of this hub on the contact area. A lot of people use a paper clip, which is a perfectly viable way to do this. Now, for some reason, the idea of a paper clip seemed a little bit janky to me. So I was at the pharmacy the other day looking for some random thing that might work, and I found these hair clips. Look like about the right size and material to me, should be springy. So I took one apart, kind of modified it a bit. Now it's just the right size for a spade connector to actually connect to it, put a hole in it, and I can bend it into the right shape. Should work pretty well. And it was only $5 for a pack of those, so a little bit nicer than a paper clip. There is also a Honda part that's actually designed as a steering wheel contact, so it's perfect for this, but it's like $20 for this one little piece of metal. So let me know what you guys think, if you have any other cool ideas. Let's see how this works. The best way to pretend you're good at wiring is to use non-insulated terminals and then use some heat shrink over them. It makes it actually look like you kind of know what you're doing, even if you don't. That's a healthy crimp. Sweet. And boom. That might be the most genius thing I've ever done. Okay, so next up, we'll pull this back off, get the plastic covers back on, make sure everything's good, and we can put this permanently in place. Okay, now it's actually time to officially mount the hub. So I'm going to get the top marking up, line it up with the splines as best as I can to get as close to centered as I can. Make sure my horn contact is on the right strip, which it is. So we can put the lock nut on. And I'll just give it a quick little ugga-dugga. On this ring, it seems like it fits nicely with the lip going down. It fits perfectly into the hub. And so our ground connection will connect down in there. So maybe I'll just go on ahead and hook it up. Nice tight connection there. And before I forget, now's the time to put this nice little rubber sleeve over this. All right, let's put our steering wheel on. Gotta feed the wires through. Hope everything stays in place. Line up our holes. And the hub is actually what comes with the screws. So we'll get a couple started. As promised, before I put the horn on, I'm just going to make sure this is torqued to about 35 foot-pounds. So I'm going to hold it in one hand because I don't want to get up against the steering wheel lock. There we go. Torqued. Okay, so if you remember, green is our ground, and then our white wire is the positive. There we go. And it just clips right in, and that looks awesome. Let's plug the battery back in, make sure it works. Okay, battery's hooked up again. Let's see if the horn works. Yeah, that works great. Let's see if we have an airbag light. If I turn the key on, nope, no airbag light at all. Even if I start it up, no airbag light, so we're good. That's awesome. Steering wheel looks fantastic, feels really good. Now, the one thing that I didn't really think about or mention is when you're researching a steering wheel and a hub, you should also think about the depth this way. And what I realized is this new setup with this wheel and a hub is actually a little bit closer to the dash than the original wheel. I just did some little measurements, and the original wheel was about 4 3/4 inches from the back of the hub to the front of the wheel, whereas this is only about 4. So in my case, that actually interferes a little bit more with my knees, which is not ideal. So I might be on the lookout for a longer hub. But all in all, the steering wheel looks amazing. I may have gone about this in the most complicated way possible, but it shows you some of the things you may or may not need to think about and modify depending on which hub you get. So I hope you found the video helpful. Check out all of our MOMO wheels at mossmiata.com, and I'll see you next time.